With some juicy names on the horizon for the NHL's unrestricted free agent class of the upcoming summer, there are a lot of tasty names to target on the latest episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Let's tap in.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In the fantasy game, it's never too early to look ahead to get ahead, which is exactly what we're doing on another late night edition of your daily 30-minute source for fantasy hockey, NHL news, and betting breakdowns. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast Tuesday edition with Steal and Flip. Shout out to the everydayers holding us down and making us your first listen every single day. This week, you can find our episodes in the evening and likely another Saturday special to make sure you are honed in on everything to dominate your upcoming drafts. Yeah, we're already getting you ready for him, Mr. Roden. Unrestricted free agent class. The bottom of this top 15 list isn't super sexy, but there are a number of very attractive fantasy pieces. Bennett, Boeser, Marchand, Ehlers, Johnny T. What will they look like next season? How we think they perform this year, and of course, tonight's bets. Over to you, Mr. Roden. Let's talk about it because some of these players close to our hearts.
Yes, they are. And regardless how you feel about Sam Bennett as a person, as a hockey player, when we talk about him in fantasy hockey worlds and realms, he's an absolute beautician, especially for those banger leagues, especially for us when we do so many categorical formats. He's just great to have on your fantasy hockey roster. And in the preseason rankings on Yahoo, he was ranked 123rd. He finished 35th at the end of the regular season. So that just shows how much his reputation on the ice kind of affects that fantasy hockey value, that people kind of let him just drop down the board. And looking at where his average draft position this year was, it's insane to me. On average, he was getting drafted 133.4. So he's getting drafted in rounds between rounds 12 and 13 right now, which is absolutely insane to me because what he just did this year, he had a career year, a career high of 51 points, 25 goals, 26 assists in 76 games, a career high, or at least tied his career high of 241, had 145 hits, 90 penalty minutes. Again, banger league beauty. And so for me, when I look at Sam Bennett as an unrestricted free agent, I believe he is 28, soon to be 29 years old. 29 in the middle of June. Another Gemini right there. Gemini season, baby. It's coming. Bill Zito has done a fantastic job signing players to some really good contracts. And when you look at what he did with Sam Reinhart, he still has 7 years left on his deal that was just signed. He'll be 37 at the time of his contract. Carter Verhaeghe, $7 million deal as a AAV deal. Gustav Forsling probably has the most team-friendly contract in the National Hockey League, signed for the next 7-8 years at $5.75 million. So in my humble opinion, I believe Bill Zito will get this done with Sam Bennett, and he will remain a Florida Panther for the foreseeable future, unless Sam Bennett, unless someone throws the bag at Bennett somewhere else, he will be a Florida Panther for the rest of his career.
Shout out the Louis Vuitton South Florida Don, Bill Zito, flashing that extra orange tan.
Make it rain, baby.
Take this in, Steele. Over the last 4 seasons, Sam Bennett has been an absolute beast. 181 points, 318 penalty minutes. He actually gets the puck on net a decent amount considering how aggressive. He had 241 shots on net.
Career high.
The other angle that is so clear here that does also play an impact on the fantasy game is we talk a lot about players shifting to new sceneries. And usually I would say we like to talk about the benefits of what that would mean and what that would bring. And usually players talked about for moving, they almost need that change of scenery. To me, Sam Bennett's value is closely tied to what his Florida Panthers teammates allow him to do. He is the perfect fit for this top 6 Paul Maurice group that if he moves somewhere else just to take some money, which I don't necessarily harsh him for if he's going to request what I think he deserves, because there's also Not many centermen out there in the NHL still that bring the skill set that he brings. That means he is going to be looking for north of 7 million, which I think he is worth. The cap has gone up.
Yeah.
All I mean is I'm not so quick to just say if he moves cities that his fantasy value goes up. I would
100%.
say you have to be careful about where he goes. Is he still very draftable? Of course, most definitely attractive. However, you don't want to reach if he goes to a city that, let's say, is a little bit more defensively lacking. And don't forget, penalty minutes and time on ice this year also, especially time on ice, that is something that went up this year and contributed to his fantasy value. So let's just leave it at this. All you need to know about Sam Bennett is, how about this series against the Toronto Maple Leafs? 19 hits over the last 3 games, a big goal, couple of big points. This guy's a gamer. There's a couple of them on this list, Steele, and I'm excited to continue to talk about him, including JT. Let's get there. Before we get to the break, we'll get Boeser, we'll get Marchand, we'll get Nick Ehlers, and tonight's bets between the Winnipeg Jets and Dallas Stars. So, what's your take on JT? Because as a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, side note from the fantasy angle, he had such a good year. He's been contributing in the postseason. I would very much like to throw this out there now. For me, it's critical that he returns to the Toronto Maple Leafs lineup, regardless of what happens in this postseason, but that's just me.
Yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere else. I mean, at this point in his career, he's 34 again, soon to be 35 years old. He's a Toronto boy. He's now been with the team for the last 7-8 years almost. He's going to be 35 soon. I don't see him signing anywhere else. And it all depends, obviously, on the money Tree Living throws his way. I believe John Tavares will take somewhat of a team-friendly deal, at least with the cap going up. I could still see him making close to $7 million. I mean, the guy had a point per game season this year, almost anyway, 74 and 75 points, 38 goals.
So good. 8 game-winning goals.
8 game-winning goals, 38 goals. It's his second best since 2018. He's been an offensive juggernaut for them, shooting at 19%. I do expect that to go down, but with the cap going up at least $7.5-8 million this next year, I believe he will sign again a somewhat team-friendly deal. And just to go back to what he does with fantasy hockey, his preseason rank was 153rd. He finished top 25 in the league. So I'm not going to say draft John Tavares in the second round, even early third. But somewhere between the 3rd and 5th round is exactly where John Tavares should be landing right now. Fantasy point leagues, head-to-head, categorical, does not matter. He really does it all. 92 hits, 45 blocks, 200 shots, 18 and a half minutes of average ice time. Power play, we know what he can do there. Plus 10. Penalty minutes, 46, which has been creeping up in his game as well. He's an all-round superstar. Taking the C off probably just lifted all the pressure off his shoulders, and it's done a fantastic job. So I love John Tavares. Anywhere between the 3rd and 5th round, he will remain a Toronto Maple Leaf for the rest of his career.
I would lean toward the latter half of what you're suggesting, in my opinion. My only angle on that
late
is
4th round.
Yeah, I'm saying, just to the later stages. 3rd round to me is just a little bit of a reach for what I'm thinking. And this is why. This was a very big year for him to prove to Toronto Maple Leafs brass that he still is not only worth a good contract, because it still matters for him, is that that he's a player that they want still. He doesn't want to go anywhere, Steele. His wife has a major career change just recently as a doctor in Toronto. His whole family is here. His kids go to school here.
Exactly.
And this is a fantasy hockey podcast.
Moving.
I'm not trying to get into the family details, but for a guy so close to home, this guy lives around the corner from my parents. He doesn't want to go anywhere. So I'm just a little bit wary of if he gets that security blanket of a 3 or 4 year deal, which could ride him in and probably will ride him into retirement. I'm just weary of that really great start that he put on and continued. Maybe it's something that if you reach on and he doesn't live up to expectations, it could burn you. However, I still see on the low end 55, 60 points and a whole bunch of categorical value. So for me, I'm thinking 4th, 5th round, maybe slightly later, but I'm with you. All of these players have varying degrees of value. And if you're a fantasy GM that can put your finger on the pulse for what that means now, you'll be dominating things come September draft season, and that's exactly what we'll continue to do on the rest of today's episode and all summer long. Before we get to bets, we got to shout out our friends at Wonderful Pistachios. If you're looking for a wonderful snack that's both delicious and nutritious, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios, which today's episode is brought to you by. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts that you can get. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you 10% of your daily value. Perfect for Steele when he's playing all those hours on Avowed. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you feel full longer. Whether you're at your desk on a road trip, personally, I love the no-shell variety. You can grab and go and snack with confidence. Get cracking and get snacking with the snack that packs a protein punch, and visit wonderfulpistachios.com today to learn more.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Flip and I appreciate all that love and support. Monday through Fridays when you can find our episodes. 7:30 p.m. is when they will be dropping this week, right before game times every single night. UFA's is upcoming free agent class, like you said, in July. We're excited for the free agent frenzy that always takes place the first week of Canada Day weekend and just July. Brock Boeser is a very interesting name to me. And I've mentioned him in the past about where I want him to go. I'm going to talk about it again as well.
I like it.
What transpired this season in Vancouver? I mean, it's pretty easy to pinpoint exactly what has happened with everybody. JT Miller, Elias Pettersson, why Rick Tocchet refused to accept that $25 million deal. Brock Boeser, UFA, not even getting a contract after getting a 3-year, $6.65 million deal on his last contract. This is a very interesting player to me. I know he's been a perennial 50, 55-point player. He did have that career high last season of 73 points in 81 games with a career high 40 goals. I want this player so bad. I want Bill Guerin to sign this player so bad to Minnesota. Put him in the top 6 with Boldy, Zuccarello. Again, if they somehow keep Marco Rossi, obviously Kaprizov, Brock Faber, I think it will do wonders for his fantasy hockey value. And I don't even think he had that bad of a year with all that, again, that transpired in Vancouver. 50 points in 75 games, 76 hits, a career high for him, 34 blocks, a career high for him, only 145 shots, which is pretty low for this player. But I think the toxicity of what happened in Vancouver, it affected everybody. And again, it obviously didn't help his game, but if he gets out of Vancouver, which he will most likely get a pretty good contract somewhere, hopefully Minnesota, I'm jumping all over this player. He had an ADP of 112.4, so he's getting drafted in the 10th round. I actually think you can let him slide a little bit longer. 11th, 12th round is where I would be aiming to get this player at, but I'm excited to see who lands him and where he goes.
It's so funny that we were just talking about how certain players, change of scenery is almost a must. I think the Brock Boeser has been on that episode list for you and I a couple of times.
For years.
In terms of, I don't even know if you saw this quote from Alvin way back in March. If I told you what I offered for Brock Boeser, I think you would have run out of here because you would not believe me. End quote. When asked about the proceedings in terms of the contract. And this is what I wanted to just tie into quickly because you and I haven't spoken about this. Jump ship on every single Vancouver Canuck fantasy asset not named Quinn Hughes. And even then, we're already hearing rumors about he wants out and he wants into New Jersey with his brothers.
Baby.
Then we're going to have to talk about a whole bunch of other angles. But oh my goodness me, the Vancouver Canucks have fumbled this so poorly over the last few seasons. And I'm not saying that they had like a locked-in Stanley Cup-worthy roster, but a couple of years ago with JT Miller clicking and Pettersson and Hughes and all of those kind of peripheral pieces having decent years, Boeser being one of them, man, this team has really gone from one to watch implode. And we talk about fantasy gold mines. This is at the opposite end of the spectrum. Be very wary of what you're doing with Vancouver Canucks pieces. This guy is coming off a cap hit of 6.65. I see it stay right in there at that number. I don't see him much higher than 7 million. I think 6.6, right there is what I would pay him. For fantasy wise, this is a potential steal, like you just alluded to, a very boom situation for fantasy offensive production. The peripherals with this guy, not what you draft him for, but he's also gotten it done in the postseason too, in his 2 years in the postseason with Vancouver. 23 postseason points in 28 games, which shows me not only has he proven that he can put up points in the regular season, he can do it in the clutch too. And you love to see that from those fantasy assets that you're investing in. Let's talk about Brad Marchand, and then after the break, we can do Ehlers and bets, little tie-in, but whatever else you got to say, and then let's go to the next
just to wrap up on Brock Boeser.
Please do.
I mean, I'm jumping all over this player. And again, it really depends on where he goes. And when you look at what happened in the early stages of his career, obviously we knew the injury concern. We know outside things were happening, mental health, family issues. That all contributed to some of the lack of productivity. But the last 4 years, he's been very durable. I mean, he missed 7 games this year, 1 game the year before that. 8 games a year prior to that. So he's been very durable over the last 4 to 5 years. Again, a handful of games missed here and there, but I love the fact that he's been healthy. I love the fact that he still contributes in the offensive zone. He had 20 power play points this past year. Again, that's really solid for what had happened in Vancouver. But Brad Marchand, interesting player as well, traded from Boston to Florida on a 1-year deal, obviously a unrestricted free agent this year. Marchand, 37 years old. His birthday was actually 2 days ago on May 11th. So he's 37 now. This is interesting as well because, do you think Bill Zito hands him out a contract, a pretty team-friendly deal? Does maybe he go back to Boston to link up with David Pastrnak again? Which also Rick Tocchet has been sort of connected to that opening head coaching job for Boston as well. Yeah, that would be interesting to me. But fantasy value-wise, where would you put Brad Marchand? Because he has had a pretty significant dip over the last couple of seasons in the offensive zone. But I'm intrigued to see what you have to say.
This is a precarious one for me because it's hard to argue against the quality that has been Brad Marchand's production, postseason or otherwise. And we're not here for postseason fantasy production, but the fact that he has still been able to get it done this season, 8 points in 9 games, especially since he didn't play a ton down the stretch with some injury there. It took him some time to come back. This one of all of the players on the list that we're talking about today is one that I would rather, and this is my take on this, I would rather let him slide or wait on him until much later in the draft than invest in him and take him too early and see what I think would happen. Because to me, Steele, I don't see him returning to Florida, and that's a concern for me. Because if he does return to Boston, we know what's going on there as well. Speaking of graveyards, not a ton to love there in terms of elite fantasy value. So is he still a back end of the draft target that could be sneaky good for you? Of course. Am I a little bit jaded by all of the times that he has burned the team we love the most? For sure. But I'm not trying to take away from his ability to still produce. But what I will point out, 80 points to 67 back-to-back, down to 51 this year. The needle's pointed in the wrong direction. And for a player that is still going to command around $6 or $7 million, I don't know how many teams in certain positions are going to be willing to have to invest in a guy that's going to be 37 years old. So there are too many question marks for me with Brad Marchand outside of what he might bring on the ice, that for me right now, of all the players, I'm going to be extra wary. And I'm okay if some other GM takes him ahead of me. I'm a little concerned about what Brad Marchand holds next season.
You said the same thing about my boy Joe Pavelski, and look what turned out in his last couple of seasons. I had to bring it up.
You had to do that, did you? Okay.
Nikolaj Ehlers, ADP fantasy value going into next season. We're going to wrap up this episode with big time bet, same game parlay, Winnipeg, Dallas, game 5. We're all over it after the break. Once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. From your boys here, Flip Livingstone and Steele Roden, co-hosts of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. We appreciate you out there. We love you out there. Subscribe, follow, 5-star rating. We appreciate it all. Thank you so much. Just to wrap up on Brad Marchand, I know you said you'd let him slip a little bit. His ADP this last year was 102.2. He was getting drafted in between rounds 9 and 10. And that's exactly where he sort of finished. His preseason ranking on Yahoo was 100. He finished the regular season at 94. That's probably where I'd be taking. Again, we're going to know where all these players are playing way before fantasy hockey drafts even take place. So that will affect where they get taken. But for me, this has never been a player that I actually, kind of go out and seek to draft. But if he falls there, he's been great. I mean, no doubt. As much as the point production has taken a dip over the last few years, he's been durable for the most part. Even at 37 years old, he's a difference maker offensively, defensively, penalty minutes, banger league beauties. He kind of does all aspects. Maybe it doesn't jump off the page like a Joel Eriksson or Vincent Trocheck anymore, but he's in that type of tier and description of what his game brings. Last player before we get to same game parlay. I'm going to leave this one up to you because, again, this is a player that I really rarely ever try to draft. I actually try to avoid him at all costs, but what a season he had. 63 points in 69 games. He was on pace for 77 points before all the injuries happened, which would have been a career high by a mile for Nikolaj Ehlers. 28 years old, unrestricted free agent. I don't see him re-signing with Winnipeg unless he gets some crazy deal. I actually think he's going to end up somewhere in the Eastern Conference, particularly probably in the Metropolitan Division. But I want to hear what you have to say because this one's interesting to me, and I don't know where I would put him going into next year's draft.
I think that this is one of those players, Steele, that because of his injury history, it makes it a little bit difficult to sometimes separate how good he really can be offensively. And look, when you look at the peripherals, you're going to get 30 to 40 block shots and hits. You're going to get some decent penalty minute coverage again, right there, 20 to 30 minutes in penalties. So it's not zero peripheral value, but that's not why you're drafting this player. I would also say this, there's a reason why he sits at 2 on a whole number of different websites lists for enticing players headed into next season. He has obviously been a much maligned trade target piece in Winnipeg. This one fits the mold for me for a change of scenery, might be exactly what he needs. And he's already been pretty good in this postseason, 4 points in 5 games. This market is also very thin on 25 plus caliber goal scorers. And say what you will about all the other aspects about this guy's game, I could see him fitting in very nicely, Steele, into a blue shirt in the New York Rangers lineup and absolutely lighting it up next season. Is that going to happen? I don't know, because like you said, I saw a whole bunch of other Eastern Conference teams sniffing around. I could see the Detroit Red Wings perhaps taking a shot on Ehlers.
I was thinking Pittsburgh or Carolina.
Who knows? But all of those make him very attractive to me. And this is a high-risk, high-reward scenario, but much opposite to Brad Marchand and me wanting to wait. I don't want to let Nick Ehlers slide too much because I do see a really big season upcoming for him. Obviously, that's tied to health, and that's a caveat. That's part of the risk. For me, I like Nick Ehlers headed into next season, and he definitely falls into sleeper category.
High risk, high reward. He had an ADP of 150.5, so he was getting drafted early in the 14th round. He had a preseason rank of 72. He finished 122nd. I mean, that's probably where I would put him if I had to guess, if I had to put him somewhere right now off the top of my head, somewhere in the 13th, 14th round. I wouldn't be taking him earlier than that. All depends which team picks him up and gives him a really good contract. But 63 points in 61 games this year. He was fantastic for them. Let's get to the same game parlay. Let's rattle these picks off if you don't mind. I'm just going to throw all 3 of mine off. Stars, money line, minus 154. I picked the Stars in 6. It's panning out exactly how I pictured it in my head. They took one in Winnipeg to start off the series. They're going to take both at home. Jets will probably get it done at home in game 5, but game 6, Dallas, They'll finish it off. Stars, money line, minus 154. I'm
Love
also
it.
taking the over 5.5 at minus 110. Last game was over 5.5. I know the game 2 and game 1 just slightly under the 5.5, but I think Connor Hellebuyck, we know he's been weak on the road. It's his kryptonite, and I expect that once again. I think the offensive group for the Stars are going to pop off. Rantanen, Robertson, and the lock of the night, Rupe Hintz, anytime goal at plus
Love
230
that.
right now. He's got 5 goals in 10 playoff games. He's actually got 10 points in 10 playoff games. But I think he's going to come ready in the offensive zone. We've seen that chemistry a little bit. Actually, we've seen that chemistry a lot with Rantanen. I love what I'm seeing from the top line of the Dallas Stars. I think Rupe Hintz is going to have a really good night.
Huge night for the Dallas Stars with Miro Heiskanen returning. Fantasy angles aside, this is a player in the last 2 Stanley Cup runs. Heiskanen led the Stars with an average of 29 minutes of ice time and 28 points over 38 games. This is huge for them.
That's not happening again.
This is huge for them, though, regardless of the point production. So I think this is actually going to lead to a really rejuvenated back end for Dallas, and I like it under at 6.5. And I understand that the Winnipeg Jets haven't won a game away from home in 8 games, and that angle with Hellebuyck is something that worries me as well. I'm going under 6.5. I think this one's going to be a much closer scoring game. Hintz, anytime point along with your goal. Love it. Might even up it to that. Maybe 2+ point steal. Depends how many more of these Miller High Lifes I have. Lock of the night, the Dallas Stars on the money line. They're the better team. They look like they're the better team. And if Connor Hellebuyck gives us one of more of those iffy half and half Jekyll and Hyde Mr. Hellebuyck performances, I like this bet even more so. So hit me with the Dallas Stars on the money line along with the under 6.5. If there's anything you take from this betting breakdown segment, sounds like it's hammer time on some Rupe Hintz props, who has looked really good.
He has looked really good, and hopefully the over 5.5, under 6.5 hits for both of us.
4-2 final, baby.
4-2 final for the Dallas Stars. Might as well put that in as a lock of the night as well. The correct score right now.
Might as well.
Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. For your second listen, make sure to check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night, until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. From your boys here, Flip Livingstone and Steel Roden, we wish you good luck with your bets. Your favorite teams still playing in the postseason. And we shall see you back here again tomorrow.